Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Alfredo Angulo is scheduled to fight Erislandy Lara. Let me just say this. You've got to be kidding me. You're telling me that a brawler who's now 30 years old with a lot of mileage on the tire before being out of the ring a prolonged period of time, right, due to visa problems and a detention. You're telling me that he is going to fight a sharpshooter, 29 years old, on the top of his game, who feasts on defensively challenged fighters who are front foot heavy, who stand right in front of him. I like Lara to win this fight. I think Lara is the sharpshooter in the fight. Quite frankly, I'm expecting Erislandy Lara to counter Angulo all night long. I'm expecting Lara to win a wide decision, if not win the fight by stoppage. Let me say this though. I would straddle the play. You know, I like to straddle everything with Angulo by knockout. I believe Angulo's only chance to win this fight is to do so by stoppage. Now let's talk about both fighters. First, Angulo. I have to admit, I'm an Alfredo Angulo skeptic. Right? In my opinion, he's a volume guy. He hits solidly with both hands. At his best, he gets in a rhythm and can switch from orthodox to southpaw and back without missing a beat. Here are the problems. Non-existent head movement, right? Great defensive fighters start to defend against your punch as it's being thrown, right? They'll roll with the punch. They'll hide a head behind a shoulder. They'll back away from the punch before it gets there. If they use their hands to block shots, they'll have a hand up. They'll catch your punch. Some guys will knock down the punch as it's being thrown. So before it gets to their area code, the punch has been intercepted. Not Alfredo Angulo. He's a tough guy. Right? He wants to walk through your punch to get to you. Now that works with beginners. That works with intermediates. That doesn't work with Erislandy Lara and elite fighters. Right? Keep in mind, look at the Ronald Hearns, Erislandy Lara fight. You're going to see Lara time a counter and end the fight on the counter. Right? If you're fighting a guy who thinks he's a tough guy, who's not going to roll with punches, not going to move his head out of the way, who thinks it's a chin contest, I'll tell you what, chin contest guys, in my opinion, over time, almost always get embarrassed in a fight. Let me go one step further. In my opinion, there are different levels of punching power. What I'm about to say is controversial. Alfredo Angulo, in my opinion, looking at his fights, is not a one-punch guy. He's not Lucas Mathis. He's not Canelo. Right? Those guys, quite frankly, don't give you a chance to get back up in some fights. Right? Look at the Mike Dallas-Lucas Mathis fight. He's out before he hits the canvas. Look at the Carlos Baldomir-Saul Alvarez fight. He's out before he hits the canvas. Angulo fights are a bit different. He's a volume guy. He's a solid puncher. He's not a great puncher. So, some of his stoppages. Richard Gutierrez, still on his feet when the fight's called. Andre Zerksin, actually, better pronunciation, still on his feet when his corner throws in the towel. James Kirkland, knocked down, hurt in the first round, gets back up, is not only able to continue, he's able to win the fight. In other words, Angulo, who is an offensively minded fighter, doesn't have that Canelo type punching power where If I'm watching a Canelo fight and it's the second round and Canelo's right hand is landing, I can look on my watch. I know the other guy's on limited time. I know the other guy is going to be lucky to stay conscious a few more rounds. Not so with Alfredo Angulo. He overwhelms you. He's up on you. I know he beat up some guys. Gabe Rosado, excellent fighter, right? But again, it's more accumulation of punches rather than that Mike Tyson-esque one-punch knockout power, right? Let me also say this too. Angulo, predominantly a hook artist. You know what I think about mid-range hookers? Defensive fighters know where the punches are coming from. They're coming from the outside. If you aren't throwing heavy artillery up the middle, then a defensively gifted fighter like Erislandy Lara is going to know that he doesn't have to spend any time blocking punches up the middle. He can brace himself. He can roll with punches. He can prepare for your punches coming from the outside. I think Alfredo Angulo is primarily a hook artist, right? Let me also say this too. He can be countered a bit too easily. Look at the Richard Gutierrez film. Look at Gutierrez hurting Angulo off a counter. In other words, Angulo's not the kind of puncher who throws a punch and hides himself. He's not Floyd Mayweather. Rather, he's a guy who's all air. In other words, he jumps in the pool and he gets all wet, right? There's no hesitation. There isn't the Bernard Hopkins ability of throwing punches and then grabbing you so you can't hit him back. With Angulo, he hits you, you hit him. He tries to hit you, you block his shot, he's wide open. Wide open. Now, I understand that Angulo has changed trainers. He's now with one of boxing's best trainers, a former trainer of the year, Andre Ward's trainer, Virgil Hunter. Let me say this, and I said it in an earlier video concerning Amir Khan going to Virgil Hunter. I believe we're all wired differently. The Andre Wards of the world, the Floyd Mayweathers of the world, I believe when they were young, I'm talking about teenagers, the way they approached the sport was to be aware of everything coming at them, right? So I believe in Andre Ward early, not 6 months ago, but more than a decade ago. I believe in Andre Ward thought to himself, you know what? I don't want to get hit. I believe he made that decision and then realized, you know what? If this punch is coming at my head, I can move out of the way, I'm going to do that. In fact, I'm going to develop a skill set where I can do that on reflex. In other words, I see an incoming missile coming toward my head. I know that's not a good thing. If I'm in the middle of a boxing match, I'm going to roll with the punch. I'm going to duck. I'm going to move my head. My head's going to be on a swivel. You're going to have a hard time finding my head. Even if I'm using my feet, I'm going to be thinking during a fight. So if I see you loading up for an overhand right hand, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to be out of the way. I want to look good when I leave the ring. I want to be able to speak in sentences that people actually understand when I leave the ring. Now, I believe that the Andres and the Floyds, they figured that out at a young age. So by the time you see them today, they don't have to think about it in the ring. It's automatic. If Andre Ward's in the ring and there's even a hint that he can get hit in the head, he's protecting his head. He's rolling to the side. He's doing what can be done. Now, maybe Virgil Hunter planted the seed in Andre Ward's mind more than 10 years ago. But right now, Andre Ward can get out of the way in a fraction of a second, right? You don't see a lot of Andre Ward fights where his head's rocking like Amir Khan's head was rocking when he was getting rocked by Danny Garcia, right? You don't see Andre Ward fights where guys are hitting him with hooks, even against Saki Obika, a great hooker, right? Guys are hitting him with hooks and he's leaning back, taking the hook off a temple and stuff like that. You just don't see that. Now, my point to you is this. A great trainer is a great trainer. But they can only do so much when you show up late in your career. When you're 30 years old or 29 years old and you haven't developed those reflexes. Your understanding of the sport doesn't include recognizing an incoming missile as the guy's preparing to throw it and then tilting your head out of the way or protecting yourself or covering yourself. You know, I'm a skeptic when it comes to Virgil Hunter's ability to suddenly give Amir Khan great head movement, right? Well, let me tell you, Amir Khan, in my opinion, is much more mobile above the waist than Alfredo Angulo. I mean, you know what? Alfredo Angulo could have Angelo Dundee as his trainer, you know, great historical trainer. I don't think he's going to look like Dundee's Ali or Dundee's Ray Leonard anytime soon. In other words, a trainer can say, look, you need to hide your head. But boxing happens in a millisecond, right? Guys aren't standing around waiting for you to be prepared, to, you know, remember the game plan. You don't have time in a ring to say, gee, what did my trainer tell me? That's right. He said, when this right hand comes, I need to roll my head this way. Either you are thinking about it and it's just ingrained over several years of training, or you're not, right? I can't do everything Andre Ward is doing today and expect to be Andre Ward, because Andre Ward's been doing this for more than a decade, right? He's mastered his craft. I can't show up now, watch him and say, oh, that's how it's done, show up in the ring and think I'm going to have the same level of success, even when I have Andre Ward's trainer, right? Even when I'm hearing what Andre Ward hears. I saw a fight the other day. It was Robert Guerrero against Andre Berto. I saw Andre Berto come in. He looked like Adrian Broner, had his shoulder up. Now, I know Berto is an explosive puncher, great athlete, but you knew that he wasn't going to be able to be defensively gifted like Adrian Broner is. Just having your shoulder in the same position that Broner has his shoulder doesn't mean that you have Broner's understanding as to how to use that shoulder, right? Or Broner's experience in being able to be defensive when the bullets start flying. So, all I can say is when I think of Alfredo Angulo, I think of the guy who got thoroughly outboxed by Kermit Cintron a few years ago. Thoroughly outboxed. Lost that fight by several rounds. Cintron is moving behind a jab. Angulo is standing there much of the time puzzled. Now, I know Angulo has changed trainer since then. BFD. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I'm expecting him to be limited against Erislandy Lara. Let me also say this too. Think about all of the fighters who are very successful in their 30s, right? And I'll show you a group that, quite frankly, is more technical than other fighters. Right? It's very rare that you see a guy who thinks he can just walk you down and physically impose himself on you in his 30s, who's able to do that successfully in fight after fight. We saw Antonio Margarito try it. Didn't get him too far against Shane Mosley, right? You know, all I can say is Manny Pacquiao figured out where he was going to be, doled out a beating that shortened Margarito's career. Miguel Cotto, I thought the fight was controversial, but Miguel Cotto held his own in the rematch against Antonio Margarito, right? All I'm saying is if you think you can impose yourself on another guy and just walk him down in every fight, You're fighting a young man's style. I once saw an interview of the great Emmanuel Stewart. He was talking about Mike Tyson, and he said Tyson's style is a young man's style. Right? At the time, Stewart believed in his fighter, a guy named Lennox Lewis, and sure enough, Lennox Lewis went on to beat Mike Tyson, right? Lennox Lewis was more technical. All I'm saying is you show me a guy like Alfredo Angulo, who has an in-your-face, I'll take your best shot, I'll laugh at you, I'll come forward, I'm all front foot, I'm throwing hooks, I'm throwing volume. You show me that kind of brawler, and I'll show you a guy who will be successful in his 20s, but who's going to have to change his approach in his 30s. Angulo right now is 30 years old. Understand, too, he's an old 30, because you're talking about a guy who has been out of the ring. There's some rust, right? And this is after very high mileage fights, including his war against James Kirkland. In my opinion, simply put, technicians age better in boxing. Now, Lara is a technician, and he's really a troublesome technician because he's a southpaw. So, let's say I'm fighting Floyd Mayweather and he's giving me all kind of problems. At least Floyd is right-handed. Just imagine dealing with a lot of problems. Slick counterpuncher who's waiting for you to make mistakes, who's waiting for you to present him with openings that he can counter, and just imagine that he's actually a southpaw, not even right-handed, right? Also, factor in the fact that Lara has gone up against high-volume guys, held his own, did not get knocked out. The Paul Williams fight, many people here online think Lara got robbed in that fight. In other words, Lara has dealt with high-volume guys throwing over 100 punches around, right? Also factor in that as good as Virgil Hunter is as a trainer, Erislandy Lara also has one of boxing's best trainers, Ronnie Shields, right? You don't have to be the hot trainer right now on the front page to be a great trainer. Ronnie Shields is a great trainer, right? Ronnie Shields has had fighters in several championship fights. And here, he has exactly the kind of fighter he likes to work with. A technician who isn't high volume, he's low volume, but he's high percentage. In other words, Lara's the kind of guy who might throw half the punches Angulo throws it around, but might land them at more than 50%. And of course, when Lara's landing counters, they're hard counters, right? He's not jabbing you or touching you, he's hurting you. Now, the kind of fighter who would give Lara a hard time is a master technician who can smother you like Carlos Molina. And Molina did give Lara a hard time, right? Molina's the kind of guy who could come in and hold you. Molina knows how to fight inside. Few fight inside as well as Carlos Molina. We saw that in the James Kirkland fight. In fact, compare and contrast Angulo's fight against Kirkland, where Kirkland's able to dole out all kind of punishment, right, with Molina's fight against Kirkland, where Molina's inside on a high volume free swinger like Kirkland, and Kirkland's frustrated for most of the fight. And you understand the kind of technician Carlos Molina is. I think it's a mistake to look at that Erislandy Lara Molina fight and reach any conclusion other than that Molina is a craftsman, right? My point to you is here, Lara's not fighting a craftsman. He's fighting a volume guy who's rusty, who hasn't been with Virgil Hunter that long, right? Who shouldn't be confused with Andre Ward. So I'm expecting Lara to be able to light up Angulo the entire fight. I don't think boxing-wise this is a close fight. I'll concede Angulo has a shot at a knockout. He only has a puncher's chance. The bet I'm recommending is Lara to win the fight. I think that's the most likely outcome. Hedged against Angulo by KO. Let me just point out that I did not say Lara by decision. because I believe that if Lara finds the openings that I believe he's going to find, I believe he does have a chance at stopping Angulo late. Let's remember, this Angulo suffered a long layoff, has a lot of rust, is not at the top of his game. Understand, too, that unlike Kermit Cintron, Lara now has the benefit of the Cintron tape. In other words, he's seen a boxer deconstruct Alfredo Angulo, right? He has seen what works against Alfredo Angulo from a boxing technician. Not the Kirkland film, but the Cintron film, which I think is more meaningful. So I like Lara to win this fight. That's what I expect. I'd hedge to play with Angulo by KO. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. And let me just say, as I said before, these tough guys, you can hit me. I'm going to continue to come forward. I'm going to walk you down. You know what? Everyone's a tough guy at 25. When you're 30 and you've tasted your own mortality, you know that technicians actually have the advantage. Thanks for watching.